So are you okay with the setup of this right here? Is that okay? So if you were doing this by hand, how did they do that? How did they do that? Anybody any idea? The entire question, if you had to do this by hand, goes, is that this? All the work is right there. Any ideas? This is the evaluated integral, right? Mm-hmm. And you're plugging in 0 and 2 to get that, correct? Mm-hmm. So something minus something, when you plug in 2, you get the first thing. Okay. Any ideas? Let me do this. If we let x equal tangent theta, what do you end up with? The square root of 1 plus what? Tangent square theta, but what is on the outside here? Dx is what? What's the derivative of tangent? Secant square theta d theta, correct? Everybody with me on that so far? What's 1 plus tangent squared? You should remember 1 plus tangent squared is secant squared. So the square root of secant squared is, so you have secant theta times secant squared theta d theta. So what does that become? Secant cubed theta d theta. Okay, so that looks terrible, right? So how do you think you go about doing this one? What do you think? What integration method do you think you use on this one now? You use integration by parts, exactly. So if you use integration by parts here, you want to say that u is secant theta. So what is v prime going to be? Secant what? Secant squared theta d theta. So what is dv? What's du going to be? Or sorry, u prime. I say u prime. What is u prime going to be? Come on, you know what it is. What's the derivative of f? What's the derivative of secant? No, derivative of secant is secant tan, everybody. You just got to know that. Sorry, you have to know that. So what is v going to be? The integral of secant squared? Anybody know what the integral of secant squared is? You know, what is it? Tangent. The integral of secant squared is tangent, because what's the derivative of tangent? Secant squared. So what does this sucker equal right here? What does that sucker equal? That equals tangent theta times what? Secant theta minus the integral of what? Secant theta tangent what? D what? Well, d theta, right? Well, that's something, right? But what is tangent squared? What's tangent squared? What is it? So we have tangent theta secant theta minus secant theta, but what is tangent squared? It's secant squared theta what? Minus 1. This right here is the key thing. This right here is the same thing as that. Do you agree with that? Yay? Are you with me so far? So that's d theta. And now, what do you do now? You just distribute tangent theta secant theta minus what? Secant cubed theta plus what? What's going to be plus? Because this and this, right? So plus what? The integral of what? Secant theta d theta, right? But what's over on the left-hand side here? The integral of what? Theta d theta. Are you with me so far? Are you with me? What can we add to the other side? So you now know that 2 of secant cubed theta d theta is equal to tangent theta secant theta plus the integral of secant theta d theta. But what is the integral of secant? Anybody remember what the integral of secant is? So I'll stop here because I know you guys want to get back to your life here. But the idea is, what is it now? Are we getting closer to what we want? Yes. What's the integral of secant? Yeah. Well, you can figure that out and then over what? Secant theta plus tangent theta d theta. That's technically true, right? Because what am I multiplying by? 1. You're technically doing that. So if you do that, I'll give you this is terrible. I'm having PTSD from my high school calculus. This is if you set u substitution as secant theta plus tangent theta, if you actually set that, everything falls through really nicely. Everything falls through really nicely. Just I'm telling you right now. So what is du equal to? What's the derivative of secant? Secant theta what? Tan theta. What's the derivative of tangent? Secant squared theta, right? Times all on the outside what? D theta, right? So if you make this substitution, what happens? You end up with the integral of, you end up with, yeah, secant,